I'm your host, Dino Watt, and get ready to be inspired as you learn exactly how to own your role. And welcome everybody to the Own Your Role podcast again. Well, first of all, when we are recording this, it's Happy New Year to you. So if you're listening to this show immediately, then you know it's a Happy New Year. And just wanted to wish everybody a great 2024. Some people are glad 2023 is behind them. I had a great 2023, so I enjoyed it, but that's gone now, and we're not going to get it back. So we're now into 2024, and excited to share some more podcasts with you with all of these unique entrepreneurs that have been lucky enough to be able to find, and they found me. And I hope you've really been enjoying the show. And from the feedback we've been getting, you have been, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all of those that have shared this podcast with their colleagues and their friends. And wherever you're listening to this, whether it be on the treadmill or in your car, on your drive home, thank you for being a part of the Own Your Role podcast and the movement that we're trying to do here. As always, please subscribe and like the YouTube videos, or make sure that you're subscribed on your podcast channel so that you get alerted when a new episode comes out. And so far, we've been putting a new episode out just about every week. So thank you so much again for doing that. Our guest today is going to be talking to us about something I think so many people struggle with and challenge with, no matter where you are in your business, which is the idea of money. And we all have our money blueprints and our own money belief systems. And I'm super excited to have Sugey here to talk about this. And Sugey's team reached out to me and said, hey, I think that we'd be a good collaboration for your podcast. And when I read her bio and read what she's all about, I absolutely agreed. So excited to have her here. As always, remember everybody, when you hear things that you like, please feel free to reach out to our guest and support them in what they're doing as well, because they are in a place of service for you. That being said, let's get the show started. Sugey Piedra, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here and share a little bit of my journey, of course.
Yeah, well, I always say that is where I feel like we all are connected, is in our stories, because we all have our own stories, and that's where I always start with the show. So could you start with just telling us a little bit about your background and your story and how you got to be where you are right now?
Yes, of course. So, I'm an enrolled agent, and what that is a federally licensed tax preparer. So I do taxes across the United States. What's made me unique and different is, obviously my background, my upbringing, first generation, my parents are immigrants. And I found that as being the oldest, I was in charge of always explaining things to them, translating things to them. And one of the things that happened when I was very, very young, I must have been like 13, 14 years old, was back then you had to file your taxes via paper. And they took out their documents to sign and send, and they accidentally mixed the envelopes and didn't know how to put them back together.
Ooh.
And so what do? Here, explain this to me. Where does what will go? And I'm like, well, this is foreign. I have no idea what this is. But my dad always thought that just because I learned how to speak English or I was going to school, that I should just know all this stuff, right? So at a very early age, I had to learn a lot of things that kids my age wouldn't even bother to look at, right? But I had to. There was no choice. So we had a neighbor, and he was a retired older gentleman. He was a white man. He loved telling me stories about our neighborhood and things like that, right? And so I went to him and I said, Mr. Tracy, please help me put this back together. And so he looks at it and he goes, I don't know how to put this back together. And I'm like, well, you're white. That in my mind, that's what I believed. I believed that
Yeah.
because he spoke English, he was from this country, that he should know.
Wow.
He didn't. And right then and there, I realized that it didn't matter where you're from, what kind of money you make, what kind of languages you speak. Taxes are just difficult to understand, period. And so at a very young age, I made it my mission to understand them, not thinking that I was going to make a career out of it, but more of really figuring things out. I found it intriguing. I found it interesting. And so my dad would take me to the post office to pick up the booklets, because back then it was by paper, and I would read them, follow the numbers from here to there, do all this crazy following forms and instructions. I found it intriguing. So maybe I was around 21 or so when I first got licensed. And I did it as a side hustle. I did it because I saw a commercial with H&R Block and I was like, you know what? I can make some money off of this. I've been doing this for years, helping my parents out with it, doing their taxes, doing my own taxes. Let me see what I could do. Well, the message spread really quick that I was doing taxes. And before you know it, I was doing my aunts, my uncles, my grandmas, my grandpas, everybody in the neighborhood wanted me to just kind of
Wow.
do taxes. And it was a side hustle, but the side hustle grew. And in the meantime, I'm working for a CPA firm, learning from the bottom up how to, just work in a CPA firm. And fast forward, 15 years or so of working in different CPA firms, learning the industry, finally getting my degree in accounting and all of that. I realized that, finance is just the topic that everyone dreads talking about.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't matter how much money you make. We think that because maybe we're living paycheck to paycheck, maybe, somebody that makes a lot of money doesn't have those issues. It's not true. I'm here to tell you that I've sat behind this desk for over 20 years and have dealt with people of all shapes and forms. And money is just a difficult topic. And
Can I
tax
ask,
foreign.
can I ask you, I sorry to interrupt you, but I really
No.
think it's fascinating. Why do you think that is? Because it is such a, people would rather talk about their sex life than money,
Yes,
right? What is that about? Why is that, do you think?
I think it's our society in general. This stuff is not taught in our school system, right? So in fact, it's the other way around. It's taught that we're not allowed to talk about really how much we make. When you
Mhm.
talk to somebody, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm well. I make good money." Well, what does that mean?
Right.
You know, "Oh yeah, I just make 7 figures." Well, what does that mean? And
Right.
so we don't really disclose things. And I think it's our society, and I think it's time to break that. This is why in my opinion, why we have kept, this, money being so difficult to talk about has also kept us in this rat race of trying to just, work and make more, work and make more. But it's not about how much you make. It's about what you do with your money that matters.
Yeah.
And
It's so true. I absolutely agree. It's this weird, like I said, taboo. It's this, and I grew up that way. I mean, I grew up with different money mindsets. I joke often, and it's true, but I use it as a joke, where my mom, would say if there was a rich person in our town or someone she perceived to be rich, oh, they have buku money, they're probably crooks, and all these different mindset things. And even in your own family, even
yeah,
within your own family, you don't we didn't talk about money. I don't know how much my parents made. I
yeah,
knew we were super poor at
yeah,
a certain point, and that's when I grew up and realized we were so poor. But my kids assume the amount of money that I make all the
yeah,
time,
yeah,
and they don't know. And it's just this really interesting thing. I feel like there's this sense of, measurement of your character, measurement of your intelligence, measurement of your abilities and value based upon money. And you're right. I think it's funny that your parents thought, you were going to school, so therefore you should know tax, right? There's no tax prep class in
it really
junior
isn't.
high or high school.
Yeah, it really isn't. And I think that breaking the cycle, the reason I love doing these podcasts and these interviews is really to put it out there, is spread the message that, our industry is broken, right?
Mhm.
Our tax industry is based on volume. And so everyone has to do their taxes,
Mhm.
but every preparer has a line waiting out their door because it's volume, right? In
Mhm.
order for us to the typical tax preparer to make a good living is the more we got to do more taxes. So the more we pump in, the more pump out is how we make our living, is how we make money, right? But these people come in and they leave just as they came in, not knowing how much they really made, not knowing how much Uncle Sam really took for them, not knowing where did all their money go, and is there something that they can do to make a difference for the next year?
And
That's my mission.
they're trusting some stranger, right?
Yeah,
And like you mentioned, the H&R Block stuff, right? When you have somebody, especially I think what the majority of the population does, where you just hand over your stuff to someone else who really, other than the fact that you're paying them, has no real dog in the fight, right? Has no There's nothing that they're getting out of it other than being paid to
Mhm.
make sure they're doing everything right by you. So you are paying the right tax, but the least amount of tax you possibly can. And you really are trusting a stranger.
Right. You really are. And that's where it comes to, we need to take the time to interview that person a little bit more. Figure out this individual is supposed to be part of your financial team, right?
Mm.
We're all supposed to have a financial advisor, an attorney, a tax person, an accountant that we go to. And when we don't spend the time really finding those individuals, then we're left with whatever's out there, right?
Yep.
And so if you really take the time to find somebody that does care about you and your finances, then this person is going to take the time to review that return with you and say, hey, did you know that if you just make this one tweak, it's going to make a difference in the long run. It's going to make a difference in the way that, Uncle Sam taxes you or whatever it may be. But again, because we're so volume based, a lot of these preparers don't have that time. So you need to find yourself what's called a tax planner,
Mm.
somebody that's going to actually spend 30 minutes to an hour with you reviewing your tax return and coming up with the game plan on how to make a difference for the following year. What can you change that'll make a difference for the next year? Because if without any advice or any change, you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you find yourself in that rat race, in that wheel, that nothing changes. Why does nothing change? You make more money, you get a raise, you get a second job, you get a side hustle, but at the end, Uncle Sam's taking more from your pocket because nothing has changed.
You're one of the first, you're the second person I've heard talk about, a planner. I have a
Mhm.
friend who talks about most CPAs are tax historians,
Correct.
right? Where they'll like, okay, cool. Well, let me tell you what you did this last year and what you owe, as opposed to doing what you said of saying, all right, let me be a fortune teller. Let
Correct.
me put it out there and say, well, now that we know this, here's our base. Let's change things up so you don't have to do this again next year.
Right.
And it is a different language. You mentioned earlier, and it's so true. It's a language none of us learn unless you're a tax professional. It's changing all the time, and it just feels so overwhelming when you deal with who's primarily because you're more of a planner type,
Correct.
right? So who do you typically deal with the most when it comes to your average client?
So when we do planning, where we typically see a difference is going to be with, your small business owners. They need a lot more guidance, right? But the W-2 earners have so much potential, but it's breaking so many barriers with the W-2 individuals because our system's made for the W-2 individuals to pay all the tax.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting in front of somebody who's a high earning W-2 individual, my tax strategies they shrink, right? I have like 5 pages versus when I have a self-employed individual, I have 50 pages or whatever, I mean, the
Right.
tax code is humongous. There's so many things.
So many things.
So it's about finding what's right, what's going to fit you, your values, your goals, and stuff like that, But it doesn't mean we can't make a difference, right? We can make a difference with anybody that wants to make that change. I always share, I have a client when I first started to really see that there was something wrong, with our system was right around the 2008, 2009 crash where we saw people that were making a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, I had a couple making $500,000. One professional married another professional,
Mhm.
making $500,000 household. And yet they were losing their house, their cars were getting repoed, their
Wow.
credit was going to crap. And back then, you got to remember that when your credit was bad, you couldn't rent, right? Because
Yeah.
rent was still based on credit.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff was like devastating. And couples would sit in front of me with shame, tears, and be like, I can't even rent a house because my credit cards have been so let's say you had a credit card with, a $20,000 limit because you were late on other things or your house was being foreclosed. All of a sudden, they would shut those credit cards. And now whatever little debt you had on them was already over the budget, right? Or over the limit
Right.
because they
Right.
were shrinking your credit limit. So it was like one devastating thing after another. And these people were making a lot of money. So, I was just like, how can this be? And then here comes my client making $70,000 for the year, a custodian at a public school, and he's out there buying houses that are being foreclosed on.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait a minute. How is it that you make $70,000 a year, but you're out there buying the properties that my other clients are losing that make a lot more money than you? That's when a slap in the face, not just for, I mean, it was for me basically to see that it wasn't about how much you make, but what you do with your money that matters. This man kept his life at his $70,000 earning and never lived beyond his means, but started to generate rental properties, rental income, passive income. And his passive income was tax-free. And so I was like, what am I missing here? So I became this financial analyst and started studying this man and what he did and how he made his money moves. And then I just started to spread the word to other people that make more money, had more money, and can do what he's doing so easily. It's just no one ever told them how,
Yeah.
or that this was even possible.
Yeah. So true. So if you were to look at your breadth of that time period from when you notice, wow, there's a problem here, to what you do now, and like we both said, things are changing all the time, brand new, laws went into effect when it comes to business ownership just 2 days ago, right? About filing and things like that. What would you say for your average client, who I know you deal with a lot of service-based companies
Yes.
who are really trying to make a difference in the world, they're service-based ownerships, business owners. If you were to say, like, I don't know, I'll say 5, what are the top 5 biggest kind of challenges or mistakes or unawareness that people have when it comes to their finances, and especially around taxes?
Right. Well, taxes are literally black and white, right? What I mean by that is when you take the time to really review those numbers, you could really see how much you made, which tons of people get surprised because they don't realize how much money they made.
Mm,
And then the other number is how much money Uncle Sam really took from you.
mm.
People figure that because they get a refund, that they beat Uncle Sam.
Right.
Yeah, you beat Uncle Sam. You got a refund because you overfunded.
Because you paid Uncle Sam.
Paid too much, right? But they don't but no one really looks at the line item that
Mhm.
shows how much Uncle Sam took from your pocket. So just starting off there is fuel to begin to encourage yourself to make a difference, to start changing the way you look at your finances.
Mm.
And the second thing is what you can do, what my W-2 employees have. Yes, I just mentioned that the system is made for them to pay major taxes, but what they have is something called purchasing power. When it comes to like mortgage lending, which I promote a lot of real estate, or going after, a franchise or acquisitions of businesses, their income is so easy to prove because it's on a W-2 form. So they have something called purchasing power. Yeah, they're paying major taxes, but if they learn how to utilize that purchasing power, they would get out of this rat race so much quicker than my self-employed small business owners would. It's
You
just
know,
no one talks about it.
it's so true. I'm just gonna interrupt you there. I remember I was making pretty good money for the first couple years of my business, probably about a good 6 figures. And yet I was taught to do whatever you can to write off as much as you possibly can. So we were basically building everything through our business, spending it through our business. Yay, we're making money. We've got a nice house and car. My kids are going to school, all that stuff. And then I went to go buy a house. I
Mhm.
actually think it was only a car. And they were like, we can't approve you because you don't make any money. I was like, no, 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 no. Let me show you. I make all this money. I said, yeah, you make over 6 figures. Great. But you write almost all of it off because you can and you do everything right. But because you don't have a W-2, because you don't have something we can prove, we can't give you any money. And the lady, I remember her saying to me, I've had millionaires come in here, people
Yep,
making millions of dollars and can't get approved for a car loan.
that's true.
And that was my wake up call. I was like, wait a minute. And right then I was like, okay, how do I give myself a W-2 out of my own business so I can start proving that? And that's been such a godsend. And you're right. It is that purchasing power of going like, I'm not worried about, I've actually just had this conversation with my daughter who's an influencer and making great money. about you need to run that through a business and pay yourself through the business as an actual employee.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so that's what a planner does, right? The tax planner is going to be your forward thinking, proactive. I'm already dealing with clients about 2024. 2023 is gone. I
Mhm.
can't, there's so little I can do to help you with
Right.
2023 other than prepare a return and say, this is what you did.
Right.
It's time to start thinking about 2024. What are your goals? What are you trying to do? Where's your business going? What's the trajectory you're taking? And what strategies can we implement today to make that difference? And so when we have small business owners and we talk about purchasing power and we talk about what are the goals, lining up those financials in that business to fit that. Like you mentioned, I can make an amazing tax return. The client leaves super happy because they owe little or zero taxes, but they cross the street to the bank and the bank says, no, you don't qualify for anything. And so I left you even in a worse position,
Yes.
or if there's a better word, poorer, right? Because you can't advance. You cannot grow your assets because you are showing that you're poor on this tax return. So you're learning how to utilize the tax return, such a valuable tool, yet we don't understand how to read it. So
It's interesting, say, because I have a friend, Garrett Gunderson, who does financial insurance and stuff like that. And he used to say, when people talk about passive income,
mhm.
and he's like, can you like think about that? In what area of your life is it okay to be passive and be successful?
Mhm.
You can be passive in your marriage. You're not gonna be successful if you're passive in your marriage. You're gonna be passive in your health. You're not gonna be successful in your passive healthness.
Mhm.
So why are we all focused on this passive income idea? And what I see you talking about is the intentional income, the intentional planning, the intentional focus. That's a huge difference that not a lot of people talk about.
And that's the mission behind all of this, right? If
Mm.
anybody is listening out there, it's specifically that is that we have to change all of this with intention, right? What is our intention? What we want all this to work in our favor, not Uncle Sam's favor. I'm
Yes.
not promoting not paying taxes. That's not
No.
what I'm promoting. What I'm promoting is let's pay our fair share. We're
Yep.
in a country that's built off of taxes, so I love taxes in that sense, right? I mean, think about it, right? It funds a lot. But if I'm going to overfund it, I want my money to be used wisely. And that's where I think I could do better if I if I build this huge wealth portfolio where I create generational wealth for my kids and grandkids and all that, then I'm creating more money for this economy than anyone else, right? And so that's what I want to do is I want to teach my kids and breaking that cycle. Like you said, when do we ever talk to our kids about taxes and money and stuff? But if we start and leave them with the portfolio that they know what our mission was and how to run that portfolio, it makes a huge difference. And we put more money in this economy than anything else, right? But it has to be done with intention, wisely. I only want to pay my fair share, not any more than I have to. And it can all really be done with proper planning. That's all
Yeah.
it takes is really good planning and a team behind you to put all that together.
Would you say that so because we have awareness, we have realized that you have like that purchasing power. Would you say that even a number three or one of the five would be about this proper planning idea that you're not like people don't plan. They just they let life happen and well, I'll deal with it when it happens instead of
Yes, because that's what our society has led us to believe taxes is, right? Right
yes.
now we're entering the new year. Everyone's talking about taxes, and all they want to do is prepare them, get them done, and not have to think about them again until the January of the following year.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, that is a huge mistake. Yes, you want to wrap up 2023, but find out where you can improve so you can make those changes throughout the year in 2024. I meet with my clients on a quarterly basis throughout the year. All we're doing is planning 2024.
Mm.
And what did we do the last 3 months? Make a tweak next 3 months and so on. And so, but it's very proactive planning, very proactive, making sure that we're going to be able to buy those things that we want to buy, use the tax return for what we're setting it up for. I believe in passive income through real estate. I mentioned that before.
Mm.
I created a membership group where it's a hand-holding process in a sense, but what is out in our community right now is a lot of education about flips and buying properties and all this, but people still don't do it. It's not action taking. So you're left with all this knowledge, but still not action taking. So
Mm.
I said, members of my community, clients of mine, I'm like, enough of the learning, let's take action. What can I do to help you? The tax return supporting you, you learned this, you learned that. And so I've put together groups in different states that allow us to purchase properties. And so what that does is properties that cost us, $100,000. And so a down payment on 100,000 is so much more affordable than it is in California coming up with a $200,000 down payment.
Yeah.
And I share my story. I bought my first because I wanted to know how this works. I wanted to follow that custodian's, my client who was a custodian, how was he doing it? Well, unfortunately, I'm not in those times where I could do it because not everything's not foreclosing, and if properties have gone through the roof, but I still wanted to do it. So I started to do it out of state. My first property was in Cleveland, it's in Cleveland, Ohio. $70,000 for that property. My down payment was $17,000.
Nice.
Doable, right? And so that's what I started to tell my clients. I'm like, look, this is doable. So before you know it, 20, 30 of my clients are like, we want to buy a property and we want to buy a property because I have that money. And so people started buying them. And so now we created a community where we get to share, other places that they're buying, we're buying. And it's kind of cool to watch we're playing like Monopoly, the game where we're exchanging one house for a bigger house or an apartment complex. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to say, I'm generating passive income and I'm learning how to make it tax-free. And they're participating in everything that I tell them is doable, and they're actually doing it. And that to me is a huge success.
I love the idea of, we're not just learning and getting the knowledge, but we're actually doing it. And we're doing it, yeah, especially I'm sure so many of them for the first time.
Right.
Doing it is kind of scary. So doing it in a safe manner with a group of people, we're all analyzing it, we're all working together. And if something happens, the world turns upside down and it doesn't pan out, we're not out our life savings and ending up in that situation that you talked about with the people making $300,000 or $500,000 and having to foreclose and having to repossess and all that stuff because they overextended themselves.
That is true. And that's what I've noticed that has made a huge difference in what I bring to the table is that I share this knowledge, right? I share these stories because we all have a different story and we all have different goals.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do notice among all the clients is they never thought they could do it. They never thought that this was out there. They didn't know how or that it even existed. And so by me sharing and telling you that so-and-so can do it making this, or this other person making this much money and you find a place where you relate, right? And all of a sudden they're like, well, if they can do it, I could do it, right? And so it's made a lot of people start to understand how to play in the game. There's risk involved in everything we do.
Sure.
Absolutely everything we do, right? But what I tell my clients is, like you said, a $17,000 investment is a lot less than spending $200,000 on your first rental here in California. And so they seem to be able to swallow that a little bit better.
Yeah, a little bit better for sure. I'd love to hear one of your, if you can, like top of mind favorite stories of seeing that transformation and seeing somebody really, even if they weren't not successful before, but even just like kind of mindset open. Do you have any stories you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's many of them. Some that come to mind because a lot of them share the same things. Is like I said, not thinking that they could do it, but when the rules click in your head, all of a sudden you're a powerhouse. And what I mean by that is, imagine if you come in and you didn't know that, you could do something like this, and you only make $100,000 a year, let's say. But you're like, I live paycheck to paycheck. And I'm like, you do, but what if we start to tweak this and tweak that? And so all of a sudden they save a little money to get this property, right? This property cash flows in, for example, my case in Ohio, it cash flows a couple $100s a month. Well, guess what? I'm not going to get rich off of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? I don't need those $300 a month. So then I turn around and I put that in another sort of investment of a vehicle. I can open a brokerage account, a life insurance policy, save it for another deposit of another property. So all of a sudden you start to see that you're not just growing one asset, but you're growing two assets.
Mm.
And then you're like, wait a minute, that didn't take much effort, so can I do it again? Yes, you could do it again. And then I'm like, now let me show you how you can make it tax-free. And so now I show them how depreciation works and how we can create a really cool scenario. And now that money Uncle Sam doesn't touch. And they're like, so I get to keep all this? I'm like, yes, you get to keep all this. And so now they're like, well, if I keep doing this, I think I can retire at least 5 years early. And I'm like, guess what? That's another thing that we could throw in the mix. So just realizing, I mean, helping clients realize that there's so much we could do, so much opportunity that can be opened up just by having somebody on your side that can share or can help you and handhold you through this process is, to me, I mean, that makes me feel so satisfied, so happy that I can help these individuals just see a bigger picture, think outside the box, and then make it become a reality. I have a lot of clients that want to retire early because they see it now. As before, it was like, I'm never going to be able to retire early. Guess what? You can.
Let's talk a little bit about that, about how it makes you feel when you get to this. And I'm going to bring it all the way back to where we started, who, the people that kind of guided you or pushed you or forced you into this type of thinking, your parents.
Right.
So how has this, through the years, obviously as a teenager going through high school and junior high, you're preparing taxes, but obviously your knowledge over the last 20 years has gotten so much deeper. How have you been able to bless the lives of your parents and family members because of this?
I mean, that has been so rewarding. It's been beautiful to be able to, help my parents in so many ways. The business is not just mine; it's my sisters and I. We run the business.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's very family oriented type of a business, right? But there's pros and cons to the upbringing that we have, right? There was a lot of work that I had to do, a personal inner work to be able to, work through some of those limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Did we have limiting beliefs, break through some of those barriers? That's on such a personal level. That has nothing to do with my business, but yet everything to do with my business. I went into a coaching program wanting to learn sales, wanting to learn how to become a better, business owner. And they took me back to my childhood days and going through all those limiting beliefs, which was pretty bizarre. But I'm very grateful for my upbringing, but you have to learn to also look at the cons of it. The fact that we grew up poor with limited money, and my dad always telling us that we didn't have money. And
Mhm.
now telling my dad we have money, we could do this, taking him out to nice places and him telling us like, we shouldn't be wasting money like this. I'm like, Dad, it's not wasting money. It's being able to enjoy the fruit of our hard labor because we work hard. We do a lot.
It's an investment in our relationship together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, it's so you're constantly looking at what I call it is stopping and smelling the roses, right?
Mhm.
You have to stop and pat yourself on the back for all the good things that you've done, for all of the accomplishments that you have done up to this point, and what is it that you're trying to do to moving forward. But in the beginning, it was difficult. I believe that I had to help everybody, and it was so hard. I was working myself to death pretty much. And then I had to realize that, you know what, I can try to help everybody, but not everybody wants to be helped.
Yeah, it's not the
Oh,
hardest, right?
oh
When
gosh.
it's like, here it is, it's right here. Like just take this, drink this. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so I went through the same type of process years and years ago, when it came to money, and I realized, because I would get so frustrated about how my wife and I, and especially when I was first starting my career, I'd get a client and I'd make money and then I'd spend all the money, and I'd
Yeah.
make money and I'd spend all the money. And it's this roller coaster of entrepreneurial money making. And then I started doing some of this work, right? That you were talking about, looking at what are my money blueprints? Why do I have these habits that show up? And I came to realize that when my parents divorced when I was 8 years old, my dad understood how to game the system when it came to child support.
Hmm.
And so he wouldn't pay for 2 months, knowing that if he didn't pay for a third month, he would get his wages garnished. So he would not pay for 2 months and then suddenly pay on the third month. So we would go 2 months with nothing,
Wow.
nothing, nothing. And then third month, oh, we have money. And what do? We'd go out and spend it right away. 2 months, nothing, nothing, nothing. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm creating the same habit
Yeah.
that I did with my parents, and I'm doing it now in my own family. And it's a very interesting thing to look at yourself that way. When you were going through that process yourself, can you think of one of the biggest kind of like habitual things that popped up for you that was an actual, even a mindset versus or mindset or an actual physical thing you did?
Gosh, there was many. I encourage anybody and everybody that could do some self-work, some really deep, good self-work, to just do it. It changes everything around you. And it was hard to believe when I first my business is only about 5 years old when I branched out to do my own business, just because I found every CPA firm that I went to was stuck in that volume based, and I wanted to make a difference in my clients' lives. So I had to open up my business in order to make that difference, right? But in the beginning, when my coach would tell me that, my personal life drives my business, I was like, there's no way. Like, I'm so put together in my business, even if my home is crazy, and I have a toxic marriage, it doesn't matter. Like, my business is the one place I could say that I'm strong. Man, did that slap me in the face. Wow. I did not know how much my at-home life was really impacting my business.
It's all connected, right?
It's all connected. So that to me was huge, especially because I fought the coach tooth and nail about it. There's no way. I just didn't see the relation.
So, hey, I'm so glad you said that, because when I started in this podcast, the original iteration of the podcast is mostly around doctors, professionals, orthodontists, dentists, chiropractors. And I can't tell you how many times I have made that argument with people of saying, listen, you can't be the best doctor owner of your business if you've got so much stuff going on in your marriage. And people are like,
Yeah.
no, no, no. When I go to work, that's where I get to focus. That's my focus time. And it's totally different. I'm like, I'm telling you, it all bleeds over.
Yeah.
Because if you had an argument with your spouse in the morning and you're upset and you think you can just walk that off and walk into office, and that's not going to affect your attitude, your personality, your temperament all day long,
Yeah.
you're not living in reality. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you pointed that out.
I think there's even a better version of ourselves that we could be, and we didn't realize that until you start to fix what's going on at home or
Yeah.
in your personal life, right? Because it doesn't even have to be, maybe you're not even married or whatever, but
Maybe
there's
it's just about yourself and your
it's
own
about yourself.
self-image. Yeah.
Yep, all of that stuff, And for me, there was a lot of awakening moments that my childhood brought into. I had to realize that even though I am who I am today because of my upbringing, it also made I wasn't a regular child. I didn't have certain things that I wish I would have had. So it's not that I regret it, but it's stuff that you do have to realize that also plays an impact.
And not let it recognize it, own it, and not let it negatively move forward with you. Like being able to, like, okay, that was it. I joke often about my parents' divorce. I'm like, I made a ton of money off my parents' divorce because they taught me what not to do in marriage, right? Uh, so yeah, you have to be able to move forward with that. So if we were to look at four things that I got out of this so far, we've got the awareness of what's going on in your money, realizing what you have as the purchasing power as a W-2 employee. I really appreciate that. I think we mostly serve, most of our audience are going to be your entrepreneurs, but I really appreciate that you talked about the power that you have, the purchasing power you have as a W-2 employee. I think oftentimes, and I'll admit I'm kind of a victim of this. Sometimes I think, oh man, you're just a W-2 employee, not thinking, wow, there is power behind that because you can prove that income and you can be smart about it. And then the fourth one I have here was not actually planning
Mhm.
and not actually planning for what you want. And the last one was understanding your habits or your blueprint that we all have.
You
This
got it. I
so
love that.
good. So good. Wow. I'm so grateful that you were able to share with us this idea. You have a podcast too for people who are listening, want to hear more of it. You have a podcast called Tax Talk. Is that correct?
Hey, hey, yes, that podcast. It was supposed to be more about taxes, but it really ended up being about mindset, you
Oh,
know?
good.
I started to realize about a lot of the business owners, a lot of the clients that I have, like I said, doesn't matter W-2 earners or just self-employed, our mindset is just plays such a huge role. And so that's what it ended up turning. We do talk a little about tax. I will bring up some things, but to me, mindset was just huge. You know, if we can shift that, we can shift anything.
What's your favorite thing that you've been able to do with money for someone else or for yourself? Like, is there something that sticks out? You're like, wow, I'm so glad I was able to do that.
Um, you know, one thing that I read in a book called We Should All Be Millionaires, is the fact that, you know, we hear that money is the root of all evil, right?
Mm,
Here, there's a lot of taboo around money.
mm.
But if you really learn how to make good with money, you can help and be more impactful when you have resources like money. You could turn around and give back and to whatever makes you feel happy, right? It could be donating, it could be helping an organization, it could be, you know, anything that makes you, you know, happy. And in reality is turning that and making it where money is a resource that if we know how to utilize it can make a huge difference. I see it in my family every day. I see it in, you know, helping back and helping being able to help my parents, being able to help, you know, our entire family with it. But when you give back and you feel good, when you do what makes your heart happy, money is not bad. Money is the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Wow. So, hey, thank you so much for the amazing information you gave us. Besides the podcast, where else can people reach out and connect with you?
So we're very active on all social medias. Instagram is prominence.services. You can find us on our webpage, which is prominencebusiness.com. And yeah, I'm excited for 2024 and, you know, spreading our message even out to more and more people out there. So
And
we want to shift all of that mindset.
yeah, for sure. And I think following you and getting information from you is a great way to do that for our listeners. And for everybody that didn't hear that, it's prominence.service and being able to connect with them that way. Now, we always end our show with 4 specific questions I ask every guest. It's just random off the top of your head based upon what I ask you. Are you willing to play?
I'm willing to play.
All right. Well, it's based upon the role, ROLE idea of owning your role. And the first question is, what do you feel is your highest and greatest responsibility on earth?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say being a mom. I think that's where it starts. I think that when we are parents, we have a responsibility to teach our kids something different. Just like my parents taught me there was a better life, and I want to teach my kids that there's better out there for them. And I see it when I change my mindset. OMG, the kids change theirs. It was amazing to see them become these little positive kids themselves. And I'm like, gosh, those my kids?
That's beautiful. That's awesome. What do you want as the ultimate outcome for your life?
I want to be able to, and this has been a goal of mine for maybe about a year or so, that I discovered that I can work smarter and not harder, that I can help many without driving myself to the ground. That's been a huge realization. I have a mission and I want to be able to spread this, but I don't necessarily have to, like I said, kill myself on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't want that because then we won't have you to spread it. The next question is, what do you consider true leadership to be?
Somebody that's a little more understanding and flexible. We all have our story, we all have our journey. And so, even though I wish people would do certain things, we have to understand that there's a reason that they can't see even, what they're capable of. Or as a leader, you have to be able to understand that everybody has different walks of life, and we just have to, walk alongside with them and help
Hmm,
them as much as we can.
love that. Lastly, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, every single one of us will have our last day on this earth.
Mhm.
Between now and dead, what experience do you hope to have or want to have?
Wow. Definitely just I want to be able to say that I lived my life to the fullest. Regret is one thing that, is it's tough. And I don't want to die with regret. I want to be able to say I've done and accomplished everything that, I wanted to or said I would do. It's sometimes it feels hard, but I believe that if every day we just do a little bit towards it, then you're going to be like, hey, I had only time to do this, but I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Sugey Piedra, I am so grateful that you were here today and sharing with us your wisdom and your knowledge. I know there's so many great notes that were taken and so many great ahas that were given. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
No, thank you so much for having me. And anything that you put out there has such great value. So I enjoy listening to your podcast. Definitely will share it with my clients as just another piece to add to their knowledge.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, everyone, again, thank you for being a part of our audience and being part of our ripple effect that we're trying to put out there every single day. The information you got today, whether you use it for yourself or you share it with someone else to let them know they can do more with their money and have more with their money, even if you took the simple idea of talking to your accountant or CPA or whatever and say, hey, I need a tax strategist. I need a planner, not necessarily a historian. I need someone who can help me look into the future and help me have a better one for myself, my family, my friends. And if you did that alone, you will have gotten more value than you could possibly ask for out of this podcast. So thank you for being here, everybody. And remember to subscribe and like it, share it with your friends and families. And we will see you on the next episode of Own Your Role podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.